Well, for the second day in succession, it is time to return with another Championship Manager special, and this time it's a head coach rather than a manager coming in. Unlike the surprising news out of Sheffield United the last few days, this time we've kind of known what's been coming here because Bristol City have today announced the appointment of Gerhard Struber, the former Barnsley manager, and of course a head coach in several other nations as well, as the head coach on a 3-year deal until 2028. As always, we're going to talk about the new man. We're going to talk about the old man, who, of course, in this case wasn't sacked in Liam Manning, but he moved on to Norwich City. We've talked about him there already a bit earlier in the summer, but we'll have a little look back at the last year at Bristol City, how things are progressing, and what Gerhard Struber needs to do to take this side to the next level. Because after the side have arguably overachieved this year, it's quite a tricky job to come into. We're going to first talk about Liam Manning, though, and the job he did and the position that he leaves Bristol City in, because it's quite a key part of the statement, which we'll talk about when we're focusing on Struber, about the fact that Bristol City have tried to change the way they operate in recent years, developing a younger squad, a sort of philosophy across the club in terms of playing style, which is becoming more and more common now. But also the fact that they're trying to become a little bit more aggressive, a bit higher pressing, and creating a sort of pathway through the club for younger players. Now, Bristol City last season, as we all know, managed to sneak into the playoffs in sixth place with 68 points. Didn't win any more games than last year, but were one of the few sides to actually score and concede more goals than the previous season in a championship that got far less entertaining. But the key thing they did under Liam Manning, and the thing he has to take credit for, is he made them a lot harder to beat. Now, I kind of find this quite interesting when we go to look ahead to Struber later, because Liam Manning was always a manager or head coach who was renowned for playing entertaining, exciting, progressive football. Did so at other clubs and quite often did very good jobs at MK Dons in particular, where he led them to the playoffs, and at Oxford, where of course he was up near the top of the table before Bristol City poached him. So based on that, I found it quite interesting in the last year at Bristol City that to get results and provide consistency for the club, he actually sacrificed a few of his principles, a bit of the possession, a bit of the intensity that you would normally get from his play, to make the side a bit harder to beat. But it worked because they turned, 6 of those defeats from the previous seasons into draws, and it snuck them into the top 6 before being, unfortunately, soundly beaten in the playoffs by Sheffield United. How different it might have been, though, without that red card in the first leg. But ultimately, it was progress for Bristol City, a side that so often we complain about in the prediction shows for being inconsistent, impossible to predict, mid-table specialists who go on great runs and awful runs. They became a side that were fairly solid and fairly easy to call, which is a great credit to Liam Manning. But he had to go against some of his footballing principles to do it. And a little bit like yesterday's episode where we talked about Ruben Sellers and Sheffield United, as we move on to the new man here of Gerhard Struber, we've got some similar things, because if we look at the statement now, he links up after leaving FC Cologne, where he was sacked despite being in second place near the end of the season. They did end up getting promoted. It was a bit of a weird one, but he joins from FC Cologne, where he most recently managed after spells at Salzburg, obviously New York Red Bulls, and we know from before that Barnsley, where he took over in the 1920 season and then did a brilliant job after the lockdown to get them away from danger, albeit they survived because of Wigan's 12-point deduction. He did a great job there, and we'll go back to his other English experience again in a minute. But let's talk about Bristol City and what they've said. They're delighted to have Gerhard Struber joining them. He has managed in a variety of different countries, including that experience we just talked about in the Championship, and brings a wealth of experience and energy. For the last 4 years, they've moved their academy teams towards a higher intensity pressing style of play, and combined with this with recruiting younger players with those same capabilities for the first team, they feel Gerhard's style is perfectly suited to the way of playing, and his passion for developing younger players is a great fit for the club. It's a really exciting appointment, and they're looking forward to building on the progress the club has made. And Gerhard Struber sort of echoed that, but there was one paragraph that I thought, you are setting a bold strategy here, because look, Liam Manning was an attacking style of manager who developed younger players and did it at every other club. But he found with Bristol City that the way to get results was to be a little bit more solid and a little bit more robust, particularly away from home without possession. But Gerhard Struber, I'll leave you with one part of his statement. I like to play with high intensity on the field. We will control, we will dominate the game, and we will play attractive football for the fans. That is a very bold statement to make when you're coming in for the club. Because if you have a slower start to the season or you pick up injuries in attacking areas, are you going to be able to back that up and still do the job? It's going to be very interesting to see. And then you have to bear in mind Bristol City for the season. What are the expectations? Because after years of mid table mediocrity and just falling away at the wrong time with inconsistent and patchy form, Bristol City made that top six last year. And yes, it wasn't as entertaining to watch. Yes, they ended up having a lot of games where they didn't dominate the ball and they had to grind out results and get draws, which is what got them in there. They drew the joint third most games in the league last season, and that's what got them in the playoffs, despite winning less games than three or four of the sides that finished below them. So it's going to be bold and very interesting to see if Gerhard Struber can live up to that. But one thing I will give him is that he managed that to an extent at Barnsley, where he came in after a disastrous start to the 1920 campaign. They were struggling with Daniel Stendhal. He left them in the bottom, a bit marooned at the bottom of the table. And after a newly promoted side come up and start that poorly, you don't often see them survive. And Barnsley and Luton Town both sort of had mirroring images at the end of the season, where they flew out of the traps in Project Restart and managed to get themselves to safety. Yes, Barnsley's was helped by a 12-point deduction to Wigan, but the fact they put themselves in that position from where they were was a pretty impressive job well done. Sort of similar, I guess, to what Danny Roll did in his first half season at Sheffield Wednesday. And Gerhard Struber became a very popular man then. Unfortunately, he decided to leave at the start of the next season, just a couple of months in, as he went off to New York Red Bulls in the US. But he's got a very good CV. He did a very solid job the one time he was in England. And to be fair to him, he did play pretty exciting football. Even in that season, after a very slow start, he got Barnsley to over a goal a game and got them safe, of course, which is a pretty incredible effort. And if you look at where he's going to build at Bristol City now, and we go and look at them last season in a bit more detail, you can sort of see where the work's got to be done at the club, because there is no doubt that Bristol City have got a fairly solid base to work from and a good blueprint. They're normally a solid club and give managers time as long as there's not a disaster there. And if you look at Bristol City last season, incredibly good record at home, third highest scorers in the division at home, only behind Leeds and Coventry. They only lost 3 games at Ashton Gate and won over half of their home matches. As I said before, they became a fairly solid prediction at home, and that's something we've never said about Bristol City for a long time. So in that essence, we saw Liam Manning build that solid base, and at home was able to progress it slightly. On the road, though, perhaps a slightly different story is where 10 of their 17 draws came. They only won 4 matches away from home all season, which, to put into perspective, is the same amount as Luton Town, who got relegated. So there's definitely work to be done on that front. And away from home, they only managed 1 goal a game during the season, conceded 35 in the process as well. So it's whether they can take that style of dominating the games, being attractive, being in control at home. Can they take that away from home? Or can they find an alternative way to play that isn't sitting behind a ball and trying to play for a draw? Because it almost felt like you saw this sort of chalk and cheese Bristol City last year, where they were set up in 2 very different, very deliberate ways, depending on whether they were at Ashton Gate or not. And it's something I'm intrigued to see with Struber, because he seems very keen and very certain of the fact that they're going to play attacking, dominating, attractive football no matter where they are. So I'm interested to see what that does to their away form. If he can take it to the next level whilst keeping them solid at home, then Bristol City have got another great chance at the top 6, of course. But there is a worry that with that, those draws turn back into defeats. And we've seen from the previous few seasons, when that happens and those statistics occur, you'll see them drift back towards mid-table. So I'm really intrigued by this one. I don't really know what to expect. I think Gerhard Struber will do an okay job. I don't think there's anything on his CV or from his previous stint at Barnsley that makes you think it's going to be a disaster. But whether or not Bristol City can push for the top 6 again is tough to call, because last season, let's be honest, there were a lot of clubs in the Championship that underperformed. There were a lot of clubs that lacked a ruthless edge going forward. And Bristol City took advantage of that by being very solid, and they're building a side themselves. Now, if they can keep hold of key players, if they can add 2 or 3 more as well, then they've got one hell of a chance. But it's going to depend a lot on their summer recruitment and what the other teams around them do. And of course, for Gerhard Struber, this bold strategy away from home, is it going to pan out? He had success with it at times at Barnsley, but to be honest, towards the end of the season where they got a lot of those results, there weren't fans in the stadium. It was a very different time. How is it going to work for them next season? And especially when the players have been so used to playing a completely different way away from home, are they going to stick with it if they lose the first two or three? Are there going to be problems? It's going to be such an interesting season for them. The two questions we normally ask at the end of these, before we get to the end of the episode, is do you think the new manager will be a success? How do you think the club get on next year? And will he see out his contract? Now, I actually am going to make a bold call on this one because it's a rare instance where a manager has got a chance to see out a contract, because Bristol City will normally keep you if you're doing well. They didn't sack Liam Manning. He left the club. They are a rare club in this day and age that do give managers time as long as they're implementing the style well and doing okay. And Liam Manning, while a tough act to follow, was given time, and there are still a few areas that can be progressed here. I actually think this is going to be one of those situations where Bristol City maybe have to take half a step back to take a step forward, because there are going to be bumps in the road when you're trying to dominate games away from home against teams that are as good, more experienced, and in some cases better than you as well. So it isn't going to be easy for them. But we mentioned it yesterday in the Sheffield United special. There's nothing that really stands out at the top of the Championship this year. I don't think there's any great sides in the division. And if Bristol City can get it right on the road, or at the very least can keep up their consistent home form from last year, I think they've got a chance of being in that playoff push again. I don't think they're going to be able to go further than that this quickly, because they've talked about the fact that they're building this younger side, this new philosophy. It's not going to happen instantly. We've seen it with other clubs in the past, Brentford being a great example, where it took 2, 3, 4 years of being in the playoffs, pushing along. I saw it with my club Luton before reaching the Premier League, where it was a year really struggling in the playoffs, then another year where they were able to make it. There are going to be bumps in the road. And for Bristol City, I'm kind of 50-50 as to whether they will be able to make the playoffs this year or not. But I don't think this is the worst appointment in the world. I can understand why there was a lot of clamour for someone who has got more experience at a Championship or has got something on their CV. But looking at like a Rob Edwards, who was at Luton, who obviously looks like he's going to go to Borough now. Danny Roll's someone who's been linked to every Championship job too. Gerhard Struber has got a bit of Championship experience, a lot of European experience. And to be honest, he does generally stick to his word and build exciting sides who are going to be attacking. But it will mean that Bristol City's defensive record may well get worse next year, particularly away from home. So that's going to be the main sense of intrigue. I do think Bristol City will have a solid year next year, and I think he's got a very good chance of seeing it out, unless he has a disaster to start with on the road. But it doesn't really matter what I think, does it? Bristol City fans, how do you feel about Gerhard Struber joining the club? I kind of feel he gets tarnished a little bit for his stint at Barnsley for no good reason at all, because he actually did a very good job there. Just because they started that second season a little bit slowly. He was already gone before it really got going, so I don't think you can judge him on that. I think if given time, if given the tools to succeed, I think Gerhard Struber is a solid appointment. Do you agree or disagree with that notion? Other Championship fans, what do you think? Are Bristol City a team to watch out for next year? Are they a dark horse with Struber, or will they be back to their usual mid-table mediocrity? Give us your thoughts on that. If you did enjoy this little episode looking at the new Bristol City head coach, then please do chuck a thumbs up on it. It's not just the Robins who were in the hunt for the new head coach, though. We've got Borough to come. There's going to be others, I'm sure, this summer. And we've had a whole host already, which you can find up in the eye above. If you want to stay up to date with the rest of them, then subscribe and turn that notification bell on. Check out the Sheffield United one from last night as well. And of course, there's plenty of Championship content to come here this year. We're back in just 5 weeks' time with our pre-season predictions for the 25-26 campaign. And then we will have score predictions every single match week throughout the campaign again, where you guys can get involved in the comments and go head-to-head with me, who won't be seeing much Championship football this year. Now my club have taken a tumble down to League One. I'll see you soon for the Middlesbrough Manager special, but for now, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you're getting excited for the fixtures next week.